I am the condor, the keeper of the souls. I eat death for breakfast. I live in a house of blood, and I accept that. That's all a man can do. I was ready to be arrested that night. I wasn't ready for what happened instead. Leia had told them everything, and I was celebrated as a hero. I didn't feel like a hero at all. But if it makes Riverton feel safe at night, I'll fake that I'm their hero. And I'll fake it good. Alex wouldn't have it any other way.
Who the fuck is Alex? Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals, welcome to PopTicket. I'm D.
I'm Castor. We like movies.
And we love each other. Okay, so imagine this. A family man moves to a new town right as a serial killer starts murdering women in the dead of night with a blade that is found hidden in his basement. The man tells his therapist, hoping that his mental health condition hasn't contributed to such violence. But it has. And that part of him that is capable of such horrible things takes over, killing him, his wife, and attempts to kill his daughter and unborn child. 16 years later, after the Riverton Ripper has disappeared, 7 teens who were born on the same night as the Ripper's discovery celebrate their birthday, only to be hunted down one by one. Is the Riverton Ripper back from the dead? Or has one of these 17 snapped, ready to make sure that they don't share their birthday with anyone?
Okay, this actually makes the movie sound a lot better than it is.
Today, we are going to discuss one of Wes Craven's final films, My Soul to Take, released in 2010. This film is very disappointing in general, considering the broad plot description being what it is and who made it. Some info about this movie: it had a huge budget of $25 million. That is huge for a slasher, even a supernatural slasher. And it only grossed $21.5 million worldwide. If you compare this to Scream's $14 million budget and $173 million gross worldwide box office, this slasher is less than unsuccessful. It's a waste, almost. Mm-hmm. This was the first film that Craven had written and directed since New Nightmare, and that movie had a fraction of the budget, but also made less money than this movie grossed. Now, when I look at the time that these movies came out, it is still pretty surprising that people didn't see this, considering that Craven's name was on it. One reason that I think this movie was not well received is due to one thing that is rarely ever acceptable: CGI blood. Wes Craven has worked with some great practical effects artists to make the movies that he has, so the use of CGI was surprising, especially because this movie isn't graphic. It's not Final Destination, it's not Terrifier, where they're doing these great giant scenes of blood and guts and stuff. In theory, it would almost be cheaper to use practical effects, I would think. I could be wrong, though. I haven't made a movie. The thing is, though, after some research, I think I found out why the blood is CGI, one, and why it looks so bad. Apparently, in post-production, the movie was made 3D.
This was due to the series of horror blockbusters that were being released at the time that were all 3D in theaters. Some of these movies were Saw 7, Final Destination 4 and 5, Resident Evil Afterlife, and more lesser-known movies. This decision was probably what hurt this movie the most from a production value standpoint, because whoever made this movie 3D made it look like absolute garbage.
However, we do want to acknowledge that Wes Craven was proud of this movie before he passed away in 2015. And I am genuinely curious as to what power he had in the idea and production of making this movie 3D. I can understand why Friday the 13th or Final Destination are 3D. They have some really wild kills. You can throw stuff, at the screen and bring the audience into it that way. Even that shitty Carrie remake, I would say, was worth it. But personally, I'm really glad that this era of movie making died, especially because we wear glasses. 3D movies are not made for people who wear glasses. It's just an unpleasant experience. It makes our lives harder. I would love to enjoy a 3D movie, but I can't.
Oh, the struggle.
Gotta wear a mask and glasses.
Oh, poor baby.
Okay, you know what?
Like, My Soul to Take doesn't even look like it would be a 3D movie. There was nothing about it. There's no, obnoxious, whoa, coming towards, the camera, that they used to do in 3D movies.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Literally no shots in this movie look like it was meant to be a 3D movie, which maybe some would say that that's a good thing because, some 3D movies do get really obnoxious with that, but...
Yeah.
No, it was just bad. Bad idea.
I could see, I don't think you can use 3D without using slow-mo. I think that those two have to go hand in hand. In Final Destination, when someone gets killed or, impaled on something, it, slows the camera down and it, kind of gives you that moment in the shot. Mm-hmm. There's none of that. All the action scenes, the 5 minutes of action scenes that there are in this movie are well choreographed, I guess. They look... they look like a basic choreographed scene. They don't look impressive. It's just cut fests, and it's nothing new. That's what irritates me, is that this movie has a lot of potential as an original movie idea, but it brings nothing new to the table and just flops all over the place. Mm-hmm. But moving on from that, we want to discuss the writing aspects a little bit. We do know that Wes Craven wrote this, but we do need to discuss it, and it's probably going to be our biggest section that we shit on this movie. But yeah, what were your thoughts about this?
Yeah, this is going to get a little ranty, just as a warning. Hear me out. We all know that Wes Craven was talented. As mentioned, he created Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, two incredibly popular and good movies that turned into very successful franchises. We know he was a talented writer and director. So that is why, for the absolute life of me, I cannot understand why this movie was such a clusterfuck, especially coming from a writing standpoint. Although Dee put it rather eloquently when he was describing the plot of the movie, in reality, this plot just makes absolutely no sense. Throughout the movie, there are various plot holes and things that the audience just needs to accept as fact rather than give any sort of actual explanation for in the film. The basis for this plot is the mystical person of color trope, wherein some random legend in Haiti believes that there's no such thing as multiple personality disorder, more commonly known now as DID, but there are souls trapped in one body and they don't die, but they are essentially reborn?
It's almost saying that there's just a disbelief of DID where Haiti can, have mystical cultures and, traditional outlooks on this, but still believe in mental health conditions.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think there's any basis in the idea that Haiti doesn't believe in DID. We didn't do any research on that. It's kind of hard to find a specific thing that says Haiti believes that DID is real. But from start to finish, that whole part ruins the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's not a real thing. I don't think that this is a real legend in Haiti or anything. This is just bullshit that they made up for this movie. This is what happens with the serial killer Abel, who has DID when he dies, except it's never confirmed in the movie whether or not he actually died, as it serves as a way to subvert the audience's expectations when the killings do eventually start up again, except there is absolutely no payoff for it. We never actually find out what the fuck happened to him. And once Abel dies, the souls that were apparently trapped in his body go into 7 babies that were born, one of whom happens to be his kid, on the night he was caught and supposedly killed. But here's the thing. Even that fact is something the audience needs to figure out based on context clues. It is never fully established in the film whether or not this Haitian legend is actually true and the souls that were inside Abel actually went into these kids, or if these kids just happen to have the same personalities. I would guess that they do have the souls because Bug, who's Abel's kid, who also has DID, takes on the souls when one of them die, which, by the way, does not get explained how the fuck that works. Are we just supposed to assume that Bug not only has DID, but is also some sort of a medium? Like then again, looking back at the night that Abel was caught, he was shot 3 times, he had stabbed himself multiple times, was knocked out, but was still able to manage to crash an ambulance and have enough energy to escape? Are there supernatural elements to this movie? We don't know, and after watching it twice, I can tell you that we literally never find out. The audience doesn't even realize that Fang is Bug's sister and is the little girl from the beginning of the movie until about halfway through. I would even say more than that. We get most of our exposition in conversations between Bug and Alex. We learned that Alex murdered his stepfather, which, fuck, I would have rather have watched that than the weird fight scenes with Fang and Bug that was overacted and went on for way too long. Bug and Alex's conversations are half exposition and half inside jokes that the audience has already forgotten the context to. Instead of hearing the exposition, just show it to us.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where, like, this movie is the most weak.
Yeah.
They throw us into these 2 parts of this story. One being, establishing the Riverton Ripper, and the second being these teenagers. And we get no story on these kids. Yeah. This movie isn't short either. It's almost 2 hours. I think it is 2 hours, like, flat. Or it's, like, according to, like, the internet it is. But, like, 2 hours and they don't establish any of the 7 kids. Like, we know the religious chick, the blonde chick, Alex and Bug, the jock, and then the blind kid and the Asian kid.
They're all stereotypes.
Literally they're 90s caricatures that got pushed into the 2000s. And it's like the Asian kid, right? Like, he's a nice guy, right? He seems like it, but we don't establish that. Give us the day before the birthday of these kids. Establish that they're going to have this party for their 16th birthday that's like their tradition, and then show us that. That's what I would expect for exposition and, like, not what they did. What they did just doesn't work.
Yeah, like, why would you spend genuinely, like, 5 minutes explaining what sounded like a halfway decent plot line instead of just filming it and putting it into the movie? Not to even mention the weird early 2010s dialogue and perception of how high schoolers acted then. The weird power structure that Fang has over her quote-unquote friends and her classmates is so odd and honestly more than a little bit criminal. But we'll get to that in a second. And finally, the so-called twist at the end was not really a twist. There were 3 options for the killer. It was either Abel, who may have been alive, but who the fuck knows because it's not explained. It could have been Bug, who we see is a little unstable and has DID as well. And in this universe, that's a bad thing. And finally, Alex, who was perceived to be the funny sidekick kind of guy the whole movie, and at first, the least likely to have been the killer, which is why he was the obvious candidate for the killer.
Yeah, and, like, they do it right in making Alex the killer. He's the best option, objectively, unless they make it, like, the blind kid in some, like, real twisted shit, right? But even then, they don't give us enough of Alex to realize that he's a little twisted. It's not established well enough.
Yeah, I would say that the twist was one of the only things that this movie did halfway decent, because they could have been really dumb and set up the whole movie as if Bug was the killer, who was, like, objectively the most obvious choice when watching, and then it turned out to actually be him, which would have been a lot worse in my opinion, honestly. Yeah, that would have been super
Bug
shitty.
could not have been the killer.
No.
It would just, like,
it would have been
you're
really
supposed to feel bad for him, and then he's fucking butchering people.
No.
No.
Yeah, so overall, the writing is garbage. The plot makes no sense. And I hate that I've seen this movie twice now. Actually hate it.
Yeah, I've seen this movie probably at least 5 to 8 times. Because when I was younger, this was, like, one of those movies that because it did so badly, it was always, like, on demand or on cable or something. So, like, I would watch it when I, had nothing else to do on the weekends. I want to keep my thoughts about the writing a little bit shorter than Castor's, just because I kind of established some of my thoughts during the plot. I love and respect what a legend Wes Craven is. He's a talented writer and director, and I don't want to disrespect his memory to horror filmmaking or just in general. I love horror. It's my favorite genre that I watch regularly. However, this movie is, like Castor said, a clusterfuck. The movie's not well developed, and it was a movie that was pushed deep between two eras of horror. The weakest eras of modern horror can pretty objectively be called the 3D horror era along with the remake era. While I commend Wes Craven for giving us some horror thriller classics like Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and more, Wes Craven's name, it's attached to some of the best horror movies and slashers to ever be made. Even having 3 of his original movies get remade during the era of remakes. We watched the Hills Have Eyes remake, and it was
bad.
Very graphic. It's not a great movie, but he didn't make that movie. He just was a producer on it.
It was an incredibly graphic movie. But
the thing is that, like, even that movie, like, that movie's more believable, even if it is, like, graphic and really fucked up. Like, it's a better movie overall than this. Like, you, at the end of that movie, are rooting. Yeah, you're rooting for those characters. At the end of this, I'm like, do I care? That's my issue.
I don't give a shit about any of these characters, but I just wanted the movie to be fucking done so I could go to sleep. That was the only thing.
But at the end of the day, I want to make it clear that this movie is not ruining any legacy that Wes Craven has, in my mind, ever. It never will. Now, the worst part of this movie's writing is how much exposition it has. Like Castor stated before me, there's a lot of it. They're constantly trying to say, Fang is doing this, and Bug used to be like this, and Alex is abused, and all this stuff, and it amounts to nothing. This movie is more reminiscent of, like, PG-13 horror films that are made during the summer for, like, quick cash grabs. It has great bones. It's an original story. And it could be entertaining enough to be like, you get out of it with your partner, your girlfriend, your friends. You go in a group, pre-pandemic, of course. And you're like, yeah, that was good enough, And then you go about the rest of your day and you never think about this movie again. It also has some amazing actors who went on to have great careers, and it has a good budget. But it doesn't work, and this movie goes to show that sometimes people will have everything right. All the things to make a decent movie and still have things go so wrong. And I think the one thing that this movie did wrong the most was the writing. And I think that one thing just makes this one of the most comically bad slashers that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's it. That's it in regards to the writing, really. So, for time purposes, let's just list some of the glaring things that do not make sense within this movie. And we want to do this in an attempt to not repeat the same point over and over, because we found before that we just kept saying, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't get explained. Like, literally every 2 seconds when trying to explain this.
fun fact, people, this is our second time recording
Yes.
this episode. That's how bad this is. Like, we have not had to re-record many episodes. I mean, like, what, like 2? We had to re-record Halloween, and we had to re-record this one. And we're definitely going to also have to re-record Queen and Slim, which is an episode that we're going to do.
But
yeah. As far as that just, it ended up being a 5-hour episode, and I love editing for this podcast, but it's not, I'm never going to edit something that's that long.
Absolutely.
Like, unless I'm like making a movie, no, absolutely not. But back to my soul to take. Let's just do these things and then just move on from them and not talk about them again, because I mean, they barely talked about them in the movie.
Yeah, it was barely mentioned. So, number 1, the church that they never go to. The church was something that they pointed out multiple times in the movie, like it had some sort of significance. They never go to it. It is really never even talked about, other than like a few small little quips here and there.
Yeah, and it's like, they start the movie with a prayer. There's like obvious religious like subtext to it. It's set in Massachusetts, which is a pretty religious state. I would say it's religious because it has a higher age group. I feel like there are more older people in Massachusetts, which makes it more religious. But yeah, they keep talking about this church, and it amounts to nothing. It doesn't matter. We never even see the church. I think we see it in like the first shot where we see the teens, and it like has the bells, and that's it. It's useless.
It's not the bells. It's like they do this countdown with like their little Ripper Day ceremony where like the lights turn off at the church at midnight, and so they were waiting for the lights to turn off, and then they're all like, "Yeah, it's midnight. It's Ripper Day. Fuck yeah!" No. And then that's it.
Yeah, but the bells rang 12 times, and they just counted them. Remember? Because you remember. Yeah, because remember you were asking me like, oh, why are they counting to 12? And I was like, because they're counting the chimes of the church bells. Because every hour that the church bells will chime, the amount of hours that it is.
Sure. I won't watch it again to find out, but sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first thing. That they mention the church a bunch of times, and other than that one scene, they never go to it. They never talk about it, really. It's just this weird thing kind of in the background. Second thing, is Abel alive or dead? We don't know. Doesn't get explained, doesn't get answered. That's it. Another thing is the thing with the souls. Other than what we mentioned with the Haitian legend, maybe that's the reasoning. Maybe that's what it was. But again, there is no confirmation other than that one line at the beginning of the movie. That's it.
Yeah. Nothing. By the end, we can assume that it is true, but is that every DID case? Is that just this one guy? Did he go to Haiti and like get cursed, or like it makes no sense?
It doesn't make sense.
Nothing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Another thing is Bug apparently was institutionalized at one point. It's mentioned kind of by Fang. She says that like, oh, he's crazy, he's been in institutions. It was like during that weird bathroom scene. And
well, she says he's killed people.
Yeah, which that is another thing. She says that Bug has killed people. When the fuck was that ever a thing? He hasn't killed anybody.
I think my thing, I mean, he does by the end of the movie, but
whatever.
I think my reasoning behind that is that he was institutionalized, and they were like, this movie's already 2 hours, cut it out, and like just mention it as like her bullying him. Because in the IMDb Pro like trivia, it says that he was institutionalized. That is canon for the movie. But I think her saying, oh, he's killed people is because she blames him for their mother's, like their biological mother's death.
She shouldn't.
So that's, yeah, no, she shouldn't. She should blame her fucking father, but she's a dramatic 19-year-old girl who's still in high school, which, like, no disrespect to anyone who's in high school longer than average, I would say. I mean, you know, your journey is your journey educationally, but, like, this girl is just a bully. She's not there because she needs education. She's just kind of a bitch.
Next thing is the weird plot line with Brandon and the principal's daughter and their unborn baby. It's mentioned a couple of times.
Like 3 or 4 times.
Yes. And actually, now that I'm thinking of it, where the fuck did the principal's daughter go? Because in that pool scene, she's sitting there. Penelope, like, wanders off for a couple minutes. She comes back and she's fucking gone. Did the Ripper kill her too? What the fuck ever happened to her?
I think that we're supposed to believe he did. Because like, when he kills Brandon, he's like, fuck your fucking unborn child, da-da-da-da-da. And so I think that's him saying, like, I killed her, so, like, I killed the principal's daughter, so I killed your unborn child, I killed Penelope, I'm killing you, I killed the little girl that you wanted to have, sex with, I guess. Like, I think that's just the Ripper, like, because the Ripper, from the beginning, primarily goes after women. So I think, I don't know.
Again,
it makes no sense. It doesn't get explained, so we don't know.
It's not explained. She's never, like, we don't see her again in the movie.
I think my least favorite thing, when it comes to unexplained supernatural shit, besides the general plot, is that Penelope, the very religious, godly young woman in this movie, she, like, is literally talking to God. It seems like she's getting messages and is right about the messages, and it doesn't get explained. But Bug later in the movie is like, oh, Penelope wrote me a letter, and that letter said that the Ripper is either gonna come back as himself in his body, or he's gonna take over one of us. Penelope shouldn't have known that, though.
Yeah.
How would she know that he's gonna take over somebody's body? And I do want to say, like, what if the Ripper wanted to take over someone's body and ended up in Jerome, the blind kid? That would be a more interesting, like, I could forgive that movie.
That would be pretty funny, I won't even lie.
Like, he's using, like, Toph abilities. Because, like, the blind kid is shown to be very able as far as, like, walking around and getting around school. He's able to run with the rest of them.
There we go. There's a positive thing that we could say about the movie.
But even then, that actor is not blind, and they should.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Actors who actually have the disability that they're casting for, because there's plenty of fucking blind people in the world.
Anyways.
And then there's the fact that Alex, who's probably the smallest male character in this movie, is somehow able to move Penelope's body from the pool to the ambulance. He's also able to kick everybody's ass. Picks up Brittany at one point. Like, the bad soul is making Alex stronger, and he looks bigger. I think it's because it's like the paper mache costume is putting over him, but he looks physically bigger. And I mean, of course, the actual Ripper is played by a smaller slasher body actor, kind of like Jason Voorhees, and Michael Myers is always played by Nick Castle, or by like Kane Hodder, who plays Jason. But there's an actor who specifically played the Ripper. They never think to explain, oh yeah, Alex gets bigger, or he's like putting on this costume to make himself look bigger, or he's been like really hitting the gym.
Another thing too is, really quick, why now? You know what I mean? Like, why after 16 years does Alex start killing? Like, is it just because that's just, prime teenage years? Why not at 13? Why not at 15? Why specifically this year? It's like everyone was almost like, no, the Ripper's gonna come back today. Like, that was kind of like a weird, like, known thing, like, with the fucking teenagers.
I think, like, for teen Scream slashers, which I think Wes Craven mostly made that kind of slasher. Scream, I would say Cursed, Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, all of these are teen Scream slashers, which means that, like, 16 is that perfect age where, like, I think in Hollywood, you can be quote-unquote sexy, but you're not 18, so you're not an adult. And so it's, like, that maturation period of, like...
Yucky.
You can be sexualized by Hollywood, but you can't, you're not an adult, you're not on your own, you still have parents and shit to deal with, so you're a kid, which is a weird thing that Hollywood does, because all these people are played by fucking 20-somethings.
Yeah, definitely. The next thing that makes absolutely no sense is, how did Alex manage to kill Bug's mom, his aunt, but his adopted mother, without anybody noticing? There were multiple people in the house. including a cop at one point. And yeah, nobody noticed.
Well, the cop
He came in after he found the body, but even so.
But he didn't see Alex's little ass like running around the house to climb back into Bug's window,
Like, and also, speaking of the cop storyline has zero payoff. There's a story, like, there is a cop storyline. The cops are, like, there in the beginning when Abel is, you know, getting arrested and shit, and that's where the mystical person of color storyline kind of comes in, is from one of the cops played by Denai.
She's not a cop, she's the coroner.
She's
an EMT. She's an EMT.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because she comes in with the EMT, is doing work on him because he got shot in the vest, and then she gets her fucking throat sliced.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. And yeah, like, it just doesn't, again, I don't want to keep saying it doesn't make sense, but it has zero payoff. Yeah. Like, they all end up getting killed. I don't think Denai gets killed, actually, but... No,
she doesn't get killed, but the cop does.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's like they were almost establishing it at the beginning to be like he was gonna save the day or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just okay.
It's whatever at this point. I have a question. Why is Fang so fucking popular? We know the tropes of these movies. Popular kids are rich. They're attractive. I don't know. They play sports or they do something that gains them a lot of attention. Fang doesn't do all of this. She's goth, she smokes in the bathroom, she's mean to people, she doesn't have a boyfriend from what I see. She's just kind of mean, and, you know, I guess she puts fear into people's hearts. So, like, it doesn't make sense that she has so much power. Like, I remember the popular kids in high school, and, like, they were popular for a reason. Mostly because of sports. Fang ain't on no fucking field hockey team. Like... You know what I mean? Like, she's not playing girls lacrosse. She's not on the soccer team.
Were the popular kids at your school on the fucking field hockey team? Like...
No, I'm just talking shit, but...
So the last thing we want to touch on and, like, not mention again are really, like, the supernatural elements of the movie. Or are mentally ill people magic? Like, what are they trying to convey in this? Is this a supernatural movie? Or are people with DID just magic? Like, it's not confirmed. There's you just have to guess. You have to be okay with not knowing what the fuck this movie is actually about if you actually decide to sit down and watch this. Which, by the way, Dee and I don't recommend that you sit down and watch this unless you're going to have, like, a drunken Zoom party with your friends and you want to laugh for 2 hours at how bad this movie is.
It's a great, like, why the fuck are we watching this movie to have with your friends? But
yes.
So we're just gonna shit on this movie a little bit more and then wrap this up because, like, we really don't have that much positive things to say. Starting with, DID is a real condition that gets put into this, like, fantasy world and makes each personality a fucking soul. And I want to discuss this because this, of course, isn't the first movie in horror to do this. I think that notoriously Psycho and Split were two movies that did this. Yeah, don't do that. Like, I understand that when it comes to serial killers and stuff and people who do awful things, it is relatively easy to maybe, like, give them diagnoses that I think Michael Myers in Halloween, like, you can diagnose Michael Myers because his literal therapist is in the movie the whole time trying to fucking kill him himself. But, like, diagnosing this random killer as DID and not, like, Alex just being sick of people's shit, like, that's a better movie to me. So I just wanted to talk about that. Then there's the mystical person of color trope, or as I like to call it in this movie, the mystical Negro trope.
Yeah, that's what it's more commonly known as.
Right. It's seen way too much in movies. Like, they need somebody to be spiritual, so it's either a fucking nun, or it's, like, a voodoo person.
Or an indigenous person.
Or an indigenous person, exactly. Or it's, what's the dude who played the Candyman? He's done it in, like, so many movies.
Fuck, I forget his name. But yeah.
Yeah, like in Final Destination. Final Destination is another movie that does the mystical Negro trope. But we both love Denai Guerrera. She's an amazing actress and is in some fucking amazing movies, too. I mean...
Black Panther.
Black Panther. She was in The Walking Dead for probably the longest part of her career, and that's probably what's made her most famous. But she's a beautiful, strong black actress, and I love her. I love her so much. Fucking Cold Open. Like, it's... If you watch any part of this movie, let it be the cold open.
Yeah,
Like,
it'll tell you everything you need to know. It's actually its own movie shoved into 10 minutes. The cold open could be stretched out into an entire feature-length film, but it's instead just fucking edited and chopped and shoved into 10 minutes to make you fucking swallow it in the first.
It's like those Food Network 5-minute meals things that are just the most ridiculous meals. They'll put like a block of cheese and a turkey and they just fucking bake it, and you're like, I guess that's edible. Like,
that's dead ass the 10 minutes of the movie. It's just like, I mean, I guess that's a movie. I guess this is part of the movie.
There's good cold opens, though. Like, Halloween, amazing cold open.
Yes, it's iconic.
Fucking Up. I mean, that's kind of a kid's movie, but, like, Up has a cold open that's the same amount of time, does way better storytelling. And you don't even, you hear,
Infinitely.
like... Yeah. You want to watch Up soon? You want to cry together?
No, I actually don't.
Can we do that for Valentine's Day?
No, hell no. I'm not watching that for Valentine's Day.
I love
that. That is so fucking sad, bro.
Yeah. And it's only 10 minutes. Like, I'm pretty sure that they just took the cold open, made like a 15, 20-minute cold open. Audiences were like, this is kind of shitty. And then they were like, all right, just chop it up and then serve it to them.
Yeah. It genuinely looks like it was made by a high school student taking a film class, an amateur. It looks like a short film.
It looks like a short film.
100% it is a short film.
And if it was just a short film, that'd be a pretty fucking good short film.
Yeah, it would have been a good short film, but nope.
But then you add all these old ass actors as teenagers, you know, like that's the next thing is that like. Stop hiring 20-year-olds. Like, there are I don't want teenagers to be exploited by Hollywood. That's not what I'm getting at here. Like, treat young actors as people, but like cast younger people. Like, and also cast dark-skinned actors. Like, I'm glad that this movie, for like the one black guy character they had, he was dark-skinned, and Denai is also a dark-skinned actor, and so, like, having that tokenized ass diversity is decent, you know, at least it's not, like, fucking Zendaya. All respect to Zendaya, I love Zendaya, but, like, we keep hiring... I'm not calling out Zendaya, I'm calling out the people who are like, hey, we need a black person. Let's hire a light-skinned biracial person and say, that's a black person. No, and I'm glad that, like, it's definitely getting called out more.
Do you mean every teen, drama that they're coming out with on, like, Freeform and shit?
Yeah, or, like, Amanda Sterling, too. They are always... I'm always glad to see, like, queer actors get
100%.
some work. And, I mean, Amanda has been working. She was, like, Hunger Games, fucking The Hate U Give. These people are working. It's not like they're gonna lose money. Like, they're gonna be working.
No, and you
just
know
hire other people. Hire new people.
Representation is always good. You know what I mean? Diverse representation. And, like, but, yeah, stop hiring the same, like, 3 actors for every single role where you want a person of color. There's a lot of people of color out there. They will be very happy to do these roles. Hire them.
Yeah. I would say that this movie does okay, I would say this movie does okay diversity-wise because it's supposed to be Massachusetts, and I mean, been there. There's some. There's
It's some. Called Your Family.
Yeah. Literally, this movie looks like my family. Now that we talked some shit about, you know, the age casting, let's talk about some of these characters because they're not well developed. They all exist in this movie and this movie alone. A good movie establishes a character that lives in this movie, has lived up to this movie, and will live past this movie if they survive. That doesn't happen. Bug, he's a little bit of a coward. He has anxiety, which is... It's hard to believe how worried he is, though. Like, you're 16. You're not worried about the Ripper. You're worried about your sister kicking your ass every day, which she seems to fucking do. You're worried about, you're worried about your best friend who gets punched every day at home. That's what Bug should be worried about. He shouldn't be fucking worried about the Ripper. It's been 16 years.
And nobody's seen him, heard of him. Yeah. Heard from him.
Statistically, the Ripper's not coming back. But, it's like Bug knows he's in a movie, and that's what fucking bothers me.
Oh my god, yeah.
And Brandon, I mean, all the actors is the same thing. But this dude, Brandon, like, I hate when they hire older actors, but, Brandon as a character, he also doesn't seem like much of an athlete. We see him, like, jog and lift weights. Mm-hmm. But they could have casted, like, anybody with, like, a little bit of muscle, and I would have been... Even in high school, like, high school athletes, they be living for that sport, though. Like, the quarterback of the football team, like, he was always the most ripped dude in our school.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a stereotype, to be honest. And that,
maybe.
They perpetuate that a lot in movies, too, where it's like, the jock needs to look like this fucking... ultra buff, obsessed with weights type of person. Yeah. And it's
like this dude is that guy. He punches people every day. He literally is abusing his classmates.
Yeah, he is a stereotype within the movie. I was just talking about like more like physical attributes. I don't think that a film needs to establish like the jock character as being like, oh, I am Hulk. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he was like kind of a scrawny guy a little bit, and it's like, yeah, athletes can be a little bit more lean, but
yeah, I would rather that like if an actor is cast because they're a good actor, which I hope all these actors were. Then don't force your characters to, like, get super buff and hurt themselves doing so, like, body shaming and, like, hurting their body image. I don't think that's ever okay. You know what I mean? But anyway, Fang, she's a character. We talked about her a little earlier. I just want to say, why is she so developed? She gets the most development, but she's not one of the 7. And, like, the actress puts a lot into her for no reason. Like, she's a talented actress, I guess, but, like, it's just not worth it. None of this is worth it. It doesn't pay off, and it falls flat. Like, this movie ends like a cliff. Mm-hmm. And it's not a cliffhanger. The whole... Castor read the last lines of the fucking movie.
Yeah, in case anybody didn't realize that, the monologue in our little cold open for this episode was... Bug's last monologue for the movie, and when I first listened to it, I found it so fucking funny that he's like, I live in a house of blood, I eat murder for bread. It's like, what? I mean, like, I know teenagers are little, like, angsty kids, yeah, but it's like, even so, this internal, it was just so poorly written, and that's why I chose to make fun of it. Honestly, after watching this movie for the first time, I immediately turned to Dee and I was like, oh, we're doing this for the podcast, because of how fucking horrible it was, and specifically because of that last monologue and those last couple lines.
There's one more line. I was halfway through the window when the Ripper stabbed me.
Hence the title of this episode. When the Ripper stabbed me. That's how he says it. I was halfway
through the window when the Ripper stabbed me.
Like, that line delivery. Bro, I had to, like, stop the movie. I was laughing so hard.
I was halfway through the window when the Ripper stabbed me.
I think this movie would be a little bit better if these kids were younger. right? Like, make them Stranger Things age and make this a PG-13 movie, and this would maybe make a little bit more sense and take out, of course, the sex stuff.
Yeah, I was just about to say they would need to change Brandon's character significantly if this was going to be a movie with, like, younger kids.
I think that Brandon could have the same lines.
No.
But he would get laughed at by these other 7 kids.
I'm talking about the scene when he's in the woods with Brittany, honey. Oh, if you're talking about that part before they go running into the woods, yeah, keep that. I'm talking like when he says, I have a temper. And
yeah,
like that shit.
Creepy.
Like they absolutely should not, because what he's implying is that he's going to get what he wants.
Like, I do understand, like, it is a trope of, like, jocks to be very domineering and the shittiest people sometimes in a school, but, like, there's also some pretty sweet jocks. Like, of course, like, my experience in high school was, like, they were either the most racist classmates that I had, or they were, like, cool people. So, like, I don't want it to make it seem like we're shitting on jocks. The way they wrote this one, garbage. Piece of shit. Die. Oh, wait, he does. Huh. The only reason I think that these kids should be either a little younger or maybe even like college age is that some of them act really young and scared and naive, and others act like they're fucking 20 and they all are like in their 20s. I think that they need to kind of decide, like, are these kids all super mature or are they all super childish? You know, you can't have it be both ways, and it just doesn't work. Yeah.
So another example of shitty writing is we see the cold open in the beginning, obviously, and it's a look into the past, but there are still flashbacks from the night throughout the movie.
It's like they add exposition through flashbacks when we already
with the exposition that we already saw it. Just instead of chopping it up into 10 minutes, maybe spend like a little bit more time with Abel and with those characters. Even just like an extra day. Maybe even like seeing when Abel killed that woman that we see like on TV at the beginning of the film, like the Ripper.
Make that the fucking first part of the cold open. Show us that, like, oh shit, this Ripper guy's kind of fucking terrifying. Because, like, even when we see the Ripper, he's not fucking scary.
No.
Like, he's wearing a fucking papier-mâché mask. Like, bitch, I'll rip that shit off your face. Get the fuck out my face.
They should have made the cold open a little bit longer, or, wild thought, cut out the bullshit with the teenagers altogether and just kept the movie about the Ripper. And if you wanted to keep the supernatural elements and DID storyline, make it so that there is like a soul thing, but not have it go into the kids, but maybe make it a journey where Abel is trying to figure out a way to get rid of the souls in his body. I know that would be a horrible movie in terms of like for mental illness and for people who have DID. That would be a very, very, very bad movie. However, be a much better movie than whatever the fuck this is.
True. Or like a much better way to do this. Have it so that Abel has already raised his son and kept his DID a secret, but he's killing people. And instead of doing this 16-year time jump, have it be like, oh shit, my fucking dad's a serial killer and he keeps fucking killing my friends. Make that movie.
Yeah.
And then, like, his dad gets caught and shot, and then Alex is the serial killer. So now he has to keep dealing with shit. Like, I don't know. Do better. Do better. That's what I want this movie to do. Because it had the capability, and it didn't do it.
It's like, I feel like Wes had, like, a good idea with it, but the execution was just so bad. And so...
I have to believe that people were, like, begging him to, like studio people were like, oh, you gotta rewrite this isn't modern enough.
100%. I would guarantee that's what happened. I mean, I would guarantee that that's what happened if I had not seen Cursed.
but even Cursed, like, the high school kids are like shitty, but they're not fucking homicidal and like pieces of shit. We're getting down to the last parts about as far as like writing and plot and shit goes. Alex kills his stepfather, and they reveal it, like, in the middle of a conversation with Bug. Like, he's in Bug's room waiting for him, and he's, like, talking to Bug, and Bug's like, could you kill somebody, Alex? And Alex is like, yeah, I killed my stepdad.
He's like, yeah, I killed him like 5 minutes ago before I came over here. Like I said before in like my little summary there, I would have rather have watched that. I really would have, rather than with all the bullshit.
Because that dude deserves it. Like, that dude
he was an
deserves to
asshole.
fucking
We
die.
saw that. At least the movie showed us that. Instead of just talking about it, at least they showed us that his dad...
That's the one useful piece of exposition that, like, really doesn't... But it, again, doesn't get followed up because we don't get to see Alex kill him.
Yeah.
Like, not to say we like watching people get killed in movies, but, like, you know, like, it's a horror movie you're supposed to see.
Yeah. So if this wasn't a supernatural murder story, or whatever the hell it was supposed to be, we would still be able to see why Alex would lose it in the end, considering the fact that he was abused at home and at school by fucking a variety of people. His stepfather, Fang, you know, just his peers, you know? It's like, it would have made sense. And we talked about, like, at length how we would have done this movie differently in terms of just Alex's,
Just in general.
In general,
I feel like, I can understand having, like, the mystical Negro trope if it's a red herring. Like, that's one thing, because then you're not basing it in fact within the canon of the story, and I think that's acceptable. Because the thing is, like, when you use tropes like that and make it canon, then it's like, you're adding shit that doesn't need to be there. Alex is an abused kid, has one friend who's kind of weird himself. Stereotypically, like, if you see Alex is that kid who snaps. You know what I mean? Not to say that's any better of a trope. I don't think that kids who are bullied always snap. I think that's a shitty thing to think. But if you're gonna do this movie, make the fucking soul thing a red herring, and then make it so that Bug is thinking it's the soul thing the whole time, and then in the end is like, wait, Alex, you have the bad soul? And Alex is like, no, you fucking idiot, I'm just fucking crazy. I'm just fucking crazy. That would make this movie better. You know, it would make it better. Because then it's not supernatural. It's just it's like a human slasher, and it makes the ending a little bit easier to come to as far as, like, getting there.
It would be easier to comprehend. It would be easier to wrap up. It would answer some of the questions and solve some of the plot holes within the movie if it was just Alex who just had enough with his life and with, people at school, and especially, like, with everything with, like, the whole Ripper Day storyline. It would just make more sense if Alex just lost it. And I would have personally rather have watched that so much more than this.
A slasher where, like, somebody just snaps and it's not, like, an actual mental health condition that is getting stigmatized. A lot better to watch.
Yeah, I mean, they're
like,
weird.
You can, because, like, then, like, somebody could possibly diagnose Alex, but, like, there's not a psychiatrist who literally gets murdered in this movie who's like, you have a disease.
Violently, too.
One of his lines is like, he's not a monster. I call him mentally ill. And it's like, mentally ill people don't murder other people. Like, that's, like,
I mean, like, sometimes, but it's like,
Right, but it's not like, when you put that trope on it, it's like every sociopath is a killer. No.
Of course not.
Psychopaths is a different story. That's generally where you find the most serial killers. But even then, people with psychopathy can, like, not be serial killers.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to acting. There's really not much that either of us have to say. There are some talented actors in this movie. Some decent actors. They probably did their best with the script, and I think that their ability got overshadowed by the writing, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse about it. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, some of these actors tried their best with what they had, and others, didn't at all. the actor who played Alex, John Magaro, is actually probably one of the most well-known actors in this film, which is why it's not surprising that I would say that he gives the best performance of the movie. Bugs actor, Max Thero, I think, I have no idea how to pronounce their name. Thero. He wasn't bad either. He did the role well for what it was, I guess, if we can say that. Everyone else pretty much sucked, though.
I don't know. I would say that Denzel Whitaker had a forgivable performance.
I was halfway to the window when the Reaper stabbed me.
But, like, I mean, we don't know how you sound after you got stabbed. It sounds funny out of context, but, you know.
The thing is, this... okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Nick Lashaway, he wasn't great either. He played Brandon, but I don't want to talk too bad about him. I mean, we talked about the character and shat on that for a little bit, but while doing research for the episode, we realized that the actor passed away, I think, in 2016 in a car accident, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, he was a shitty example of the jock trope, and I think he did that well. Yeah, moving on. As we get closer to the end of this episode, I do want to say that as far as things in this movie that impressed me from a camera and directing standpoint, I didn't see anything. I felt like it was all pretty mediocre. I don't think it was really worth mentioning. I think that Wes Craven has done some impressive things as far as like Scream and such.
Yeah, I feel like the main one would be Scream.
I think that, like, if you're looking at special effects, I think not Friday the 13th, Nightmare. I think Nightmare on Elm Street is another great example, just like how they did that scene of Johnny Depp fucking like sinking into the bed. Like, that's fucking awesome. Like, it looks cool. But this, like, it's all stabs and slashes, and doesn't even look good.
There are so many times throughout this movie where they do the camera pans over to something important that's obviously within the main character's line of vision, but they don't notice it until the audience sees it trope, which is, you know, very
that's
trope.
not a trope.
Yeah, no, it's a trope.
That's not a...
It's a trope. What are you talking about?
I think it is, but I just don't think it's called that.
Okay, that's a very...
Whatever you just
okay,
called
I'm describing to you what the trope is, but it is a trope.
You had to take like 3 breaths while saying that trope. That trope was 2 sentences.
Listen. No, it is not, first of all.
It should have been. That's a run-on sentence. And you want to be a teacher.
Shut up.
How dare you?
I'm an English teacher.
Thank God, I've read
Excuse me? So, like, okay, maybe the trope isn't called that, but everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that, because it's like...
I don't think you can use camera movements as tropes, though, honey.
Are you serious? That is... No, yes, 100% you can. 100% you can call that a trope.
Oh, no.
Well, because I'm thinking of tropes as in just, like, things that are commonly and overly done within movies as a whole. I'm not looking specifically at, like, you know, writing, because, like, we talked about in our Rocky Horror episode how colors play a big part, and how that is a trope in a way. Maybe I'm not using, the word trope 100% like correctly in this, but I personally would say that is something that is way overly done in movies, and it is done in this one too, where it's like a character will see something or not see something, and the audience like doesn't know about it until the camera like points to it, and then the character notices it. It's something that is overly done. Anyways, that was just something that I had noticed and wanted to point out, because there really wasn't anything that stood out to me in this other than in regards to the directing and camera work other than that. And which is a shame again, because it was directed by Wes Craven.
Yeah, no, it's not impressive.
So, to me personally, the one good thing about this movie was the fact that it was written and directed by Wes Craven, who was a very respected filmmaker, and rightfully so, but goddamn, this was not one of his best works. Now, a lot of people may disagree with our opinions on this movie, and that's totally okay. If this is like one of your favorites, then right on, and I would genuinely love to hear why. But to me personally, this was one of the worst movies that I have seen in recent years. And, I did want to also say that I do, apologize if this episode was a bit boring for some people because we were essentially just shitting on it the entire time. But this is one of those movies that you sit down and watch it when so many other good movies have been made, especially in terms of horror in recent years. And then you look back on this movie and it is so all over the place and just so hilariously bad. And it's like, we just wanted to talk about it, specifically to shit on it. Just because we haven't done that really so far on the podcast. We've pointed out some things from movies that were kind of but
yeah, we've only done movies we like.
Really and that's why I wanted to do a movie that we absolutely didn't like, and we wanted to talk about ways that we could make it better and just point out the things that didn't make sense. And, hopefully this was an entertaining episode to listen to, and I hope that we successfully, portrayed why you shouldn't watch this movie unless it's with a group of friends, like we said before. And after doing our star rating for this movie, I did end up just giving it a 1 star for pretty much everything that we had already talked about.
When it comes to me, I just want to touch on a few things. Bug must have DID or multiple souls, and Alex dies super easily for having this giant, serial killer soul, and I don't care about any of these characters' deaths. It's about as simple as it gets for the whole fucking ending of the movie. It's 1 star. I didn't break it down into our 5 categories. I think we did when we first watched it the first time, and we ended up giving it 1 star then. And this is a movie that, on principle, I would give 0 stars for just, what it is. But I can't because it's Wes Craven, and I think, like you said, it's the only thing that saves this. He deserves better. We're definitely going to do some other Wes Craven films to balance out the scale of what we've said about what about his movies, because this is our first one that he's done. From beginning to end, literally the end credit song doesn't fit the movie. It's so bad. But you know what they say.
I was halfway through the window when the Reaper stabbed me.
That's it, y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to PopTicket.
We really do hope that you enjoyed this episode and, got something out of it. If you want to interact with us and stay updated on all things PopTicket, visit our website, popticketpod.com, and go to the Contact Us page to see all our social media. If you would like to help support PopTicket, you can donate to us by going to our website and clicking Donate to find our Patreon, or you're able to donate from our homepage on our host website on Anchor. If you enjoy listening, another way to help PopTicket is to leave us good reviews and follow us on whatever platform you use, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can even subscribe to us and like the videos on YouTube. We appreciate any and all support. Thank you so much for listening. Music created by Mark E. Beats. You can find him on SoundCloud or on Instagram at Mark_Daniels3. Our art logo was created by @Lil_DrawsArt on Twitter. PopTicket was created by Castor and Brose and is edited by Brose. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.